mysticism that has grown out of the Christian faith demonstrates the truth of this faith in its essential nucleus, thereby giving it a claim upon public reason. Of course, much of the content of theology and faith can only be appropriated within the context of faith, and therefore cannot be demanded of those to whom this faith remains inaccessible. Yet, at the same time, it is true that the message of the Christian faith is never solely a comprehensive religious doctrine, in raw sense, but it is a purifying force for reason, helping it to be more fully itself. On the basis of its origin, the Christian message should always be an encouragement towards truth, and thus a force against the pressure exerted by power and interest.
Up to this point, I have spoken only of the medieval university, while seeking nonetheless to indicate the unchanging nature of the university and its task. In modern times, new dimensions of knowledge have opened up, which have been explored within the university under two broad headings. First, the natural sciences, which have developed and based the connection between experimentation and the presumed rationality of matter. And second, the history and human sciences, in which man, contemplating his history as in a mirror and clarifying the dimensions of his nature, seeks to understand himself better. In this process, not only has an immense quantity of knowledge and power been made available to humanity, but knowledge and recognition of human rights and dignity have also evolved. For this we can only be grateful. So he's tipping the hat and saying, I spoke about medieval universities, but don't let me think I believe that chemistry is good, psychology is good, sociology is good. We can only be grateful. Yet, the human journey never simply comes to an end. The danger of falling into inhumanity is never totally overcome. This is only from World War II. The danger for the Western world, to speak only of this, is that today, precisely because of the greatness of his knowledge and power, man will fail to face up to the question of the truth. See, remember that? It's so funny. He's going, okay, there's a difference here between knowledge, power, and truth. That's so cool. That's like Benedict. Only Benedict's doing that. And you're like, what? I thought knowledge was truth. Same thing. No. And we might get so enamored by the fact that we can have Nintendo Switch and that we can play Xbox and that we can have our TVs in our cars and self-driving cars that we no longer seek the deeper questions that make the world go. That's the danger of the West. That's why we need Brishoism. You need to put such humanity in those pictures, Brie, that when people see them, they're startled. What is that? That's the human spirit. That's you. Okay, so that's kind of cool. This would mean at the same time that reason would ultimately bow to the pressures of interests and the attraction of utility, constrained to recognize this as the ultimate criterion. If you go on this side and it fails, and you develop this knowledge of the power will lead you to manipulation. Yep. And we see this.
Well, he says that at the end of this last paragraph that the church has to be about truth, like you can't, it has to be a force against the pressure exerted by power and interest.
Amazing. And so and how does it do that, Regina? Does that by broadening the mind. So how does the church resist, interest and manipulation? It's by saying there are certain things you can't do. No, you can't redefine marriage. No, you can't deny someone health care. No, you can't. There are the politics doesn't create itself. From where do you know that? Because of our understanding of reason. At the same time that the reason would ultimately bow to the pressure of interest and attraction, utility, constraint, recognize as the ultimate criterion. To put it from the point of view of the structure of the university, there's a danger that philosophy no longer considering itself capable of its true task, will degenerate into positivism. So that's a technical term, but what he's basically saying is you lose this idea of the deep questions and just become, logic. And that theology, with its message addressed to reason, will be limited to the private sphere of a more or less numerous group. So you believers have theology. Yet if reason, out of concern for its alleged purity, becomes deaf to the great message that comes to it from Christian faith and wisdom, well, then it withers like a tree whose roots no longer reach the waters that give it life. When you kick out faith, reason dies too. If reason, out of concern for its purity, no, we just want to be rational here. None of this gobbledygook. No Bronze Age myths. Alright. You're so smart, you're so pure. Well, your mind will wither like a tree whose roots no longer reach the waters that give it life. It loses the courage for truth, and thus becomes not greater, but smaller. Applied to our European culture, this means if our culture seeks only to build itself on the basis of the circle of its own argumentation, on what convinces it at the time, and if, anxious to preserve its secularism, it detaches itself from its life-giving roots, then it will not become more reasonable or pure. It will fall apart and disintegrate. This brings me back to my starting point. What should the Pope do at a university? Certainly he must not seek to impose the faith, as faith can only be given in freedom. But, over and above his ministry as shepherd of the church, and the basis of the intrinsic nature of this pastoral ministry, it is the Pope's task to safeguard sensibility to the truth. It's so cool. So he's actually taking an atheist philosopher, and he's using the atheist philosopher's words to define his own ministry. Again, the guy's just genius. To invite reason to set out, ever anew, in search of what is true and good. The Pope's job is to get you to think, to invite reason. His job is not to squash reason, it's to invite it, to search for God, to urge reason to discern the illuminating lights that have emerged during the history of Christian faith, and thus to recognize Jesus Christ as the light that illuminates history and helps us to find a path towards the future. Now, it's crazy if you just kind of look back at how short that is. He probably read this in 25 minutes. It's 4 pages.
But did he ever give us any word?
He maybe emailed it to him or something. Okay, so to sum this up, and we're going to move on like this. We're going to move on from there into enculturation with this next one.
What is that?
The quality
Of the
Christian as a human being is indisputable. Okay, so if you remember this and only this, you'll have the entire 2 courses that we taught. When you kick out faith, reason dies too. Pope Benedict. And what he's going after is, in order to get people to assent to Jesus Christ's words, they have to open their minds deeper than science. And so he gives us 5 reasons that our Christian faith doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to us. You have to listen to me as a Christian. Because for 2,500 years, this has worked. It's very logical. There's tons of reasons behind it. You know what? Your little world has to be about love. My faith life teaches us all about love. My knowledge of God is all about love. Without something bigger than people's minds will become God, and that's a very dangerous thing, because then no one can stop the government. And finally, it will. The fact is that Christians are awesome people. So you need to. I want you to view these in your soul. You guys to swallow this and to become confident, so that when you go out there, you're not afraid of the people that are like separation of church and state, separation of church and state. Because the Christian right just responds by going, "We're a Christian country." That's not going to ever win. That argument's never going to win. That's just going to make you strong at your American Legion posts with your little friends at the bar. We're a Christian country. That's stupid. Yeah, because even if it's right, it's stupid. It's changed. Because then no Muslims are allowed in the country? No. What do you do for Hindu? What do you do for Muslims? Well, they have to also have a place in a Christian country. And that's where secularism comes in, and it's a legitimate thing. But what it does do is it says, it enables you to say, you know what? It's a bad thing to act like the church has nothing to say just because it's based on faith. Because when you do that, you're going to end up destroying your reason. It's just going to all become about utility and pleasure. So good?
Good.
So that's a little foray. Now, he writes other ones that are even better, and he keeps on going. We're going to pass from this, though, into enculturation, because I want to treat this document, this is just a portion of it, and to start taking a look at evangelization as the source of culture.